At Kuze Maternity Hospital in Osaka, crowds gather to celebrate newborns, but one baby stands out, Mona Kawaii, born with a special charm that captivates everyone around her. As Mona grows up, her natural charm becomes obvious. During a game of hide and seek, when it's her turn to seek, the other kids don't even try to hide. Instead, they just stand there, wanting her to find them. This confuses Mona at first, since that's not how the game works, but it helps her realize she has a special way of drawing people to her. At 16, Mona moves to Tokyo. Now 17, she starts her days like any high school student, rushing to school after her alarm wakes her. The moment she arrives at school, the whole place lights up. Everyone, both boys and girls, can't help but stare. People are naturally drawn to her presence. However, there's one exception, Medaka Kuroiwa. While everyone else falls over themselves for Mona's attention, he remains completely uninterested. He's the only one who seems immune to her charm, which makes him stand out. When Mona greets her classmates with good morning, they eagerly rush to respond. But when she greets Kuroiwa, who deliberately avoids looking at her, he barely mumbles a reply, as if someone is forcing him to answer. This sparks Mona's curiosity about the new transfer student. Noticing his different uniform, she asks if his new one hasn't arrived yet, then checks if he's adjusting well to the class. She offers to show him around the school, mentioning it's been 2 weeks since his transfer, and tells him to let her know if he needs anything. Kuroiwa seems uncomfortable with all the attention. He pinches the bridge of his nose between his eyes to calm himself down, muttering something under his breath. The other students watch with growing jealousy as Mona pays special attention to Kuroiwa. They whisper among themselves, questioning why she's even bothering with someone who just ignores her. Kuroiwa's immunity to Mona's charm particularly annoys them. Who is he to resist someone they all adore? Mona persists in trying to talk to Kuroiwa despite his obvious discomfort. Finally, he reaches his limit and firmly tells her to leave him alone. This sends the other students into a fury. How dare he speak to Mona that way? Hurt by his rejection, Mona returns to her seat, covering her face with her hands in embarrassment and disappointment. Kuroiwa shows no reaction to her distress, focusing instead on his phone. Mona wonders how there can be a guy who won't even acknowledge her. Her status as the school's queen bee takes a hit. And as she tries to figure out her next move, she sneaks a peek at his phone. There she discovers he's looking at cat pictures, repeatedly hitting the like button. Seeing an opportunity, Mona asks if he likes cats and offers to look at pictures with him. Kuroiwa looks up, surprised. While other guys in class shout about how cute Mona is, Kuroiwa maintains his composure despite noticing her beauty and charm. Mona thinks she's finally gotten through to him, convinced his heart must have skipped a beat. After staring at her for a moment, Kuroiwa responds with "no pics for me" and turns his back on her. The guys in class leap to Mona's defense, scolding Kuroiwa for embarrassing her. Then Kuroiwa does something even more shocking. Still facing away, he tells Mona to listen, making her perk up in anticipation. But his words crush her. He asks her to stop talking to him unless absolutely necessary. This hits Mona hard. Having been showered with attention and praise all her life, she runs away in complete defeat and embarrassment. Even as she flees, her classmates, females, whisper about how graceful she looks while running. Later that day, Mona tries a new strategy. While putting up a poster on a ladder, she shows off her long legs. Sure, this will catch Kuroiwa's attention, since it works on every other guy. But Kuroiwa walks past without a glance. Not giving up, she makes a bolder move, pretending to slip and fall while intentionally flashing her skirt. When she asks Kuroiwa if he saw anything, he simply shrugs and flatly states he didn't see a thing before walking away. Realizing this plan failed, Mona moves on to plan C. During math class, she raises her hand and tells the teacher she isn't feeling well, asking to go to the nurse's office. When the teacher suggests someone should accompany her, Mona quickly volunteers Kuroiwa before another classmate can offer. The teacher agrees, instructing Kuroiwa to ensure Mona reaches the nurse's office safely. At the nurse's office, Mona pushes Kuroiwa against the wall. He looks confused, reminding her that she's supposed to be sick. With a sly smile, Mona reveals that the nurse is never there at this time. Kuroiwa stares at her in surprise, while Mona feels strange, never having to work this hard to get a guy's attention. She quickly asks what he thinks of her, wondering if she's done something wrong or if he hates her, noticing how distant he always is. Looking uneasy, Kuroiwa shifts his weight and mumbles, "That's not it." These words give Mona a brief moment of victory, but his face remains cold. Before he can continue, she executes her next plan, pretending to trip on cotton and making them both fall onto the bed. Despite being on top of him, Kuroiwa maintains his cold stare, leaving Mona wondering how he can still look at her that way. Desperate and convinced her charm must work, she opens her uniform buttons and pretends like her hands mistakenly did that. For a brief moment, it seems to affect him, but Kuroiwa starts muttering, "Clear mind, clear spirit," fighting to resist her. Frustrated and embarrassed, Mona pulls back suddenly, almost falling off the bed. Kuroiwa catches her arm, but when she tells him she's fine and to let go, aware of her undone uniform, he quickly pulls her hand back, insisting it's not what she thinks. As Kuroiwa stands to leave, he pauses at the door, quietly telling her to save such actions for someone she actually likes, then walks out. Back in class, concerned classmates crowd around Mona's desk, asking if she's feeling better. She nods, saying she's fine, and quietly returns to her seat. She manages to thank Kuroiwa softly for taking her to the nurse's office. He responds and looks her way, but Mona can't meet his eyes. Her racing heart makes her realize she might be falling for him. The next morning, Mona arrives at school looking prettier than usual, drawing compliments from her classmates. When she sees Kuroiwa in the hallway and greets him, he replies but gives her a suspicious look. Meanwhile, a girl named Asahi watches with a sad expression as Kuroiwa passes by, though she quickly denies anything's wrong when her friends ask. At the basketball court during warm-ups, Mona stretching draws admiring looks from the male students. She calls out to Kuroiwa to join her, but he ignores her, even when other students relay her message. While the coach calls the girls to prepare for the game, Mona is deep in thought. She's frustrated that nothing has worked, not her legs, her figure, or even more forward attempts. Remembering Kuroiwa's words from the nurse's office, she remains determined to make him fall for her. Ignoring the coach's team announcements, Mona loudly declares she's tired, ensuring everyone notices her glistening skin. She strategically lets her shirt ride up, revealing her waist. Her classmates' exclamation about seeing a sacred treasure draws everyone's attention. While other guys stare mesmerized, Kuroiwa turns away, muttering his usual "clear mind, clear spirit" chant. This final rejection proves too much for Mona, who breaks down. Later at the water tap area, Kuroiwa is cooling off when Mona appears. Though she hasn't intentionally followed him, she wants to observe this guy who resists her charm. Kuroiwa senses her presence but can't look up, and Mona notices his nervousness. Using the tap next to him, Mona catches him stealing glances at her. Their eyes meet briefly before he looks away, pinching between his eyebrows. When she teases him about staring, she accidentally clenches her fist under the water, splashing herself completely. Mortified as her uniform turns sheer, she's surprised when Kuroiwa immediately gives her his shirt before walking away. Unknown to them, a classmate witnesses everything. The next day, Kuroiwa's friends confront him about being too harsh on Mona. He reveals he's the heir to a cat temple, and he only interacts with elderly people and goats. He's never learned to talk to girls, especially ones as pretty as Mona, admitting Tokyo is full of temptations. Though his friends urge him to be nicer, Kuroiwa worries he might fall for her, which is forbidden by his religious dedication. Later in class, Mona returns his washed shirt. When Kuroiwa says she shouldn't have bothered, she teases him about wanting it back with her scent. This triggers her familiar "clear mind, clear spirit" chant, but rather than discourage her, his struggle only strengthens her determination. As these two conflicting forces collide, Mona's growing determination and Kuroiwa's religious devotion, one has to wonder, who will break first in this battle of charm versus spirituality? The episode starts in art class where everyone fawns over Mona as usual. When the teacher tells them to draw their seat neighbors, Mona gets super excited. Finally, a reason to make Kuroiwa look at her. She tries all sorts of fancy poses and asks Kuroiwa what he thinks. He just starts muttering his "clear mind, clear spirit" thing to stay focused, which Mona takes as him giving her dirty looks. He tells her to pose normally, but she teases him, saying she'll do any pose he wants, except nude ones, calling him a bad boy. When this joke falls flat, he doesn't even get it. She gets annoyed, though their classmates try to make her feel better by laughing. Mona's feeling pretty confident, thinking she's got him cornered with this assignment. She's already planning to celebrate with tea later, remembering how she caught him looking at her before. While she's trying to find the perfect pose, Kuroiwa can't help noticing she's pretty, but keeps reminding himself about his temple duties. She finally picks a pose she likes, and while their classmates are cheering about how model-like she looks, Kuroiwa just trying to stay calm, telling himself this is just part of his training. He just mumbles, "Whatever, that'll do," and starts drawing. Mona's disappointed again. How can he be so cool when she's literally posing just for him? She thought for sure this would work. Mona spots watching them, though she quickly looks away. The same girl who was spying on them before. While Mona's thinking about how seriously Kuroiwa taking his drawing, Haruno keeps stealing glances at them until her own partner reminds her to focus on their work. The mood shifts when Kuroiwa tells Mona he's drawing her neck. He has to look carefully to get the details right, and when he does, he can't help noticing how delicate it is. Meanwhile, Mona's getting flustered. She wants his attention, sure, but his intense artist stare is too much. She's burning up under his gaze and suddenly bolts from the room, mumbling something about not feeling well. In the bathroom, she's barely holding it together, frustration and confusion written all over her face. It doesn't feel fair when she flirts with him. He won't even look at her. But now suddenly he can't stop staring. Why can't he always look at her like that, she thinks, annoyed and overwhelmed. Back in class, Kuroiwa's friends are checking out his unfinished drawing, and they're totally impressed. When they tease him about studying Mona so carefully, he panics and starts his clear mind, clear spirit chant again, making his friends feel sorry for him. Later in the library, they both reach for the same book. Mona tries playing it cool, suggesting it must be fate, and asking to study together. But Kuroiwa practically gives her the book and runs away, though he can't stop thinking about how cute she is and how soft her hand feels. Watching him go, Mona decides to play the long game. But just then, who does she catch spying again? Yep, Haruno. What's her deal anyway? At the library, Mona slides into the seat next to Kuroiwa, thinking she's smooth with her study buddy plan. When she innocently asks to turn the page, he practically runs away, saying he'll find something else to read. That's when she catches Haruno spying yet again. Mona's brain starts connecting the dots. Maybe it's not her Haruno's watching. Maybe it's Kuroiwa. The thought sends her into a panic spiral. Another girl crushing on Kuroiwa, and a quiet bookworm at that? Her competitive spirit kicks into high gear. She can't risk taking things slow anymore. If Kuroiwa likes the intellectual type, Mona's ready to play the part. She transforms herself, showing up with glasses and a sophisticated teacup. When Kuroiwa's face turns red at the sight, she thinks she's finally found his weakness. Even her classmates are impressed by this new look. Getting bold, Mona tries some playful footsie under the table. When she finally musters the courage to ask what he thinks of her, Kuroiwa just points out her foot's hitting him and makes his escape. Frustrated, Mona starts following Haruno around, looking for any flaw to ease her mind. Instead, she discovers the girl's practically perfect, voluntarily watering flowers, cleaning blackboards when it's not her turn, keeping everything neat and tidy. It's infuriating how good she is. The changing room delivers the final blow to Mona's hopes. Not only does Haruno have a perfect figure, but she's genuinely modest about it, getting flustered when other girls compliment her. Mona's left seething. How is she supposed to compete with someone who's got everything she doesn't? Setting aside her usual confident vibe, Mona's actually getting worried, looking at how nice and sweet Haruno is. She can't help thinking she might lose Kuroiwa if he's into that type. Her usual charm tactics clearly aren't cutting it. The irony hits her when a classmate brings her a book they'd discussed, and she casually drops a "thank you, love you." The guy's practically floating on air from her words, but it makes Mona realize she's never been able to talk to Kuroiwa that naturally. That leads to her next brilliant plan at the rooftop. She times it perfectly, letting the wind carry her handkerchief right to Kuroiwa. When he catches it, she plays it cool, saying she's just taking a break too. She tries to recreate the casual magic from earlier, wanting to tell him she loves how helpful he is, but the words get stuck in her throat. Why is it so hard to say to him what she says to others without thinking? Mother Nature has other plans, though. The wind picks up, turning her romantic moment into a Marilyn Monroe situation. When she catches Kuroiwa staring, she calls him a leck, though he insists he didn't see anything. Mortified, she makes a quick exit, thinking about how Haruno's winning this invisible competition. During the school festival committee elections, Mona's watching Kuroiwa draw lots while having her own internal crisis. It's been a month since he transferred, and her supposedly irresistible charm still hasn't worked on him. The universe seems to have a sense of humor because guess who ends up as representatives? Haruno as the lead and Mona as her assistant. When Haruno says she's looking forward to working together, Mona can't help feeling like the universe is playing some cosmic joke on her. The festival planning session takes an interesting turn when Haruno starts sketching ideas. Maid cafe, play, haunted house. When she asks about Mona's middle school festival experience, Mona recalls her not-so-glamorous costume cafe days, where she couldn't even show off her charm because her face was completely covered. While Mona's watching Haruno blush and plan, she's still trying to figure her out. In her head, they're stuck in this weird love triangle, but Haruno seems weirdly happy about it. When Mona's pencil runs out of lead, Haruno offers her, but then frantically hides her phone when Mona tries to return it. Mona hands Haruno her lead, but something feels off. Haruno looks tense, clutching her phone like her life depends on it, and blurts out that Mona can't see it. That only makes Mona more curious, and she steps closer, determined to find out what's going on. Haruno panics and takes off down the hallway. Mona doesn't think twice before chasing after her, demanding to know what's on the phone. Haruno yells back that Mona will hate her if she finds out. Mona brushes it off, saying there's no way she'd hate her unless it's about Medaka. That stops Haruno dead in her tracks. She whips her head around to look at Mona, completely shocked, and the sudden movement throws her off balance. She stumbles and falls to the floor. Mona tries to stop but ends up tripping and falling right on top of her. Haruno's phone slips from her hand and lands nearby. Mona grabs it before Haruno can, her eyes widening when she sees the screen full of pictures of herself. Haruno freezes, her face bright red, stammering as she tries to explain, but Mona just stays calm and tells her she's not angry at all. Haruno hesitates before admitting that she's been a fan of Mona ever since the entrance ceremony. She says Mona is like the sun, someone who makes everyone around her smile and feel happy. Haruno nervously admits that she secretly takes pictures of Mona so she can look at her anytime, explaining that she only snapped about 300 photos. Mona, however, isn't angry. Instead, she falls deep into thought, piecing together things. She finally realizes that all this time, Haruno wasn't looking at Kuroiwa. She was looking at her. Haruno shyly adds that Mona is also her phone's lock screen, and that she wanted to change it before Mona noticed, thinking it might weird her out. But her attempt to hide it only makes Mona more suspicious. Feeling a pang of guilt, Mona gives Haruno a big hug and apologizes. However, she quickly remembers what she said earlier about staying away from her Medaka and tries to clarify. She tells Haruno that she means her Medaka fish and warns her not to get the wrong idea. Haruno smiles brightly and reassures her that she understands, which puts Mona at ease, at least for a moment. But then Haruno says that she knows Mona meets Kuroiwa, not the fish. Mona insists she's talking about the fish, but Haruno casually brushes it off, claiming she's noticed Mona acting strangely ever since Kuroiwa transferred to their school. Frustrated, Mona yells that it's the fish, damn it! Haruno, unfazed, casually mentions that she saw the time Mona wore Kuroiwa's gym shirt. Shocked, Mona asks if Haruno really saw that too. Flustered, she tries to explain, insisting she was talking about the Japanese rice fish all along. But Haruno continues, reminding Mona about the time she secretly snapped her picture in the library. She says she noticed something different about Mona that day, a look in her eyes like she saw the world in a whole new way. And that's when Haruno concludes that Mona has a crush on Kuroiwa. Before Mona can interrupt, Haruno cheerfully announces that she'll be rooting for her and fully supports her quest to find love. Mona, growing increasingly irritated, demands to know if Haruno is even listening to her. Haruno thanks Mona, saying she's now an even bigger fan of hers. That's the last straw for Mona, who shouts in pure frustration, begging Haruno to listen to her. In this episode, Mona and Haruno are chosen to be the festival representatives, starting their shared role in organizing the event. The whole class is excited and working hard on preparations, while Mona focuses on calculating the materials and supplies they'll need. While she's busy, Haruno comes over and mentions that her older sister is in the theater club and suggests they borrow some costumes for the festival. The conversation is light, and the two seem to be getting along better than before. Mona likes Haruno's idea but soon notices Kuroiwa focused on a flower, which catches her attention. Haruno sees Mona looking at him and jokingly says she could impress him by wearing one of the costumes. Embarrassed, Mona tells her to stop. Haruno laughs, waves goodbye, and says they'll meet after school. As Haruno leaves, Mona finds her a bit annoying. She recalls chasing Haruno to get her phone back and telling her to stay away from Medaka. Mona realizes this might have made Haruno think she likes Kuroiwa, but she's really just trying to win him over. Meanwhile, Kuroiwa feels someone staring at him and grows uneasy, unsure why. Later, Mona and Haruno visit the theater club to check out the costumes. Haruno suggests showing the class the outfits before doing a survey. She's excited about a maid outfit and encourages Mona to try it on. But Mona politely refuses, saying she'll think about it later. Despite their differences, they continue working together, and the festival preparations bring them closer. Haruno changes the topic and asks Mona if she's heard the legends about their school festival. Mona, curious, asks, "Legends?" Haruno explains that it's about the Bridge of Love. She opens the window and points it out, saying that if you hold hands with your crush there during the festival, you'll be bound together in love forever. Haruno adds that it sparks relationships every year, and though it's none of her business, she finds it exciting. She even says she'll pray for Mona and Kuroiwa to hold hands there. Mona quickly shuts her down, saying she's got it all wrong. Just as the conversation starts to heat up, Haruno's sister interrupts, calling her away to discuss the costumes. Left alone, Mona worries, thinking that if this keeps up, her queen bee status might be in trouble. Determined to fix things, she figures the best plan is to make Medaka fall for her, and the school festival is the perfect chance. Mona, feeling encouraged, tries on a few costumes. First, she dons the maid outfit and is surprised by how great she looks. Then she tries on a ghost robe, a miniskirt, cop uniform, and sharp butler outfit, and a bartender outfit, which she thinks might show a little too much skin. Just as she's about to change again, Medaka walks in. They freeze, both looking like deer caught in headlights. Medaka asks why she's wearing the outfit, and Mona, heart racing, blurts out it's part of her festival duties. Medaka, avoiding eye contact, mumbles that he's just there to deliver papers and will leave in a second. Before he can escape, Haruno shows up. Mona panics, thinking this could turn into a disaster movie. Without missing a beat, she grabs Medaka and hides with him in the corner, hoping Haruno won't notice them. Now crammed into the small space, both of them are feeling the full weight of their awkwardness. Mona thinks if this is what saving face looks like, I'm definitely doing it wrong. Haruno doesn't seem to be leaving anytime soon. Kuroiwa, clearly uncomfortable, starts muttering calming chants under his breath. His breath accidentally tickles Mona, making it harder for her to stay still. Just when the tension peaks, Haruno's sister calls her away and asks for Mona. Haruno replies she doesn't know where Mona is and finally leaves, freeing them from their hiding spot. Mona reflects on the situation, thinking it was a lucky moment to be alone with Kuroiwa, but then catches sight of herself in the mirror and quietly wonders what's so special about the outfit. Kuroiwa hears her and, to her surprise, says she looks cute, but adds it shows too much skin before quickly leaving. On her way back to class, he regrets saying anything and reminds himself of his vow to avoid getting close to any girl. The next morning, Mona enters the classroom in high spirits and greets everyone. When she greets Kuroiwa, he responds coldly, leaving her confused and frustrated. At the school festival, Mona's class runs a bunny cafe. Everyone is busy working. Some take orders, others serve, and a few cook in the kitchen. During a break, Haruno takes another photo of Mona in her bunny outfit. Asahi scans around for Kuroiwa and learns he's in the kitchen, so she waits hoping to see him soon. Mona uses her break to ask Kuroiwa to take one with her. He declines, saying he doesn't need it. She suggests eating together, but he eats a pancake and insists he's fine. A classmate scolds him for eating an order, but he apologizes. Mona feels like her efforts to connect with Kuroiwa are failing and suspects he's avoiding her even more than before. She senses he's embarrassed about his earlier compliments and becomes determined to clear the air before the festival ends. Kuroiwa grows wary, sensing her intentions. Haruno appears and suggests Kuroiwa advertise the cafe with Mona, framing it as an order he can't refuse. Reluctantly, he agrees. Mona is pleased and signals her thanks to Haruno, who wishes her luck. Mona shakes her head, thinking Haruno has misunderstood again. Mona calls Kuroiwa to start moving, while he silently convinces himself this is just part of his training. As they walk around, they come across a haunted house. Mona finds it unsettling, but assumes it's just another festival attraction. She suggests they check out something else, but Kuroiwa seems genuinely interested in exploring the haunted house. Reluctantly, Mona agrees to go in with him. Inside, Kuroiwa is fascinated by the decor, which reminds him of his hometown. Mona notices how much he's enjoying it, far more than she expected. While Kuroiwa is engrossed in examining a sutra desk he describes as a masterpiece, Mona accidentally gets her skirt caught on a gravestone prop. She calls him for help, but he's too distracted to notice. Frustrated, she tugs on his clothes, finally getting his attention. Misunderstanding the situation, Kuroiwa tries to avoid embarrassing her by covering his eyes and awkwardly tells her her skirt is hooked. They rush out of the haunted house, with Mona still dragging the gravestone piece, yelling that she hates haunted houses. Meanwhile, Haruno, now in charge of the kitchen, starts imagining Mona and Kuroiwa hitting it off. Her daydream is cut short when her classmate points out that her pancake has burned. Back with Mona and Kuroiwa, Mona decides she's had enough of following his preferences. Determined to make things more exciting, she takes him to Great Crepes. She buys one for herself and one for Kuroiwa. As she eats, he notices she has some cream on her face and points it out. Mona, delighted by his attention, gets momentarily distracted. She doesn't notice when a hawk swoops in and snatches her crepe. Kuroiwa, unfazed, continues eating his crepe without offering to share or showing much sympathy. Later at the concert, Mona struggles to see over the crowd and assumes the person in front of her is Kuroiwa. She asks to be lifted on his shoulders only to realize it's a stranger when he turns around. She spots Kuroiwa on the other side looking indifferent as usual. At the balloon art station, the two play with balloons. Mona uses her balloon to playfully poke Kuroiwa, but when she tries to draw a face on it, the balloon bursts. Kuroiwa doesn't seem to care and continues with his own balloon, leaving Mona feeling frustrated and defeated. She checks the time and realizes she has just over an hour left to salvage the day. Mona pauses to observe her surroundings and notices many couples in the area. She remembers what Haruno said about the Bridge of Love, where holding hands during the festival is said to bind couples forever. Spotting a nearby bridge, she wonders if it's the one Haruno mentioned and begins forming a plan. Back at the cafe, no one makes the pancakes as perfectly as Kuroiwa did, so they call for his return. Meanwhile, Asahi, who has been waiting a long time to see Kuroiwa, finally gets up disappointed and decides to leave the cafe. Will the Bridge of Love bound Mona and Medaka forever? Let's find out in the next episode. At the bridge, Mona and Kuroiwa notice couples holding hands, enjoying the romantic atmosphere. Mona wonders if these couples were dating before or if the bridge's legend inspired them. Seeing an opportunity, she tells Kuroiwa they should advertise their class cafe there to attract customers. They promote the cafe to the couples, with Mona enthusiastically taking charge. Afterwards, she tells Kuroiwa about the legend. If two people hold hands at the bridge, they're destined to be bound by love forever. Kuroiwa finds it odd and says he's heading back to the cafe. Mona, refusing to give up, pretends to trip, hoping he'll grab her hand. Instead, Kuroiwa grabs her under the arm to pull her up and starts walking away. Mona chases after him, thinking she might still convince him to stay, but their classmates suddenly appear. The cafe is packed with couples. "We need you two back now," they plead. Mona hesitates but eventually agrees, though she can't help but glance back at the bridge, determined to try again another time. The festival has ended and the class is busy unpacking. Haruno and her classmates thank everyone for their hard work, especially Mona. Mona responds with a simple "sure," but glances at Kuroiwa, feeling down about how her day went with him. She didn't accomplish her goal and plans to go home and cry herself to sleep. Noticing Mona's sadness, Haruno steps in to help. She asks Kuroiwa to assist Mona in carrying a desk bag. Both Mona and Kuroiwa are caught off guard. Haruno even insists, saying it's a directive from the committee. Their classmates, surprised by Haruno's assertiveness, remark that it's a rare sight. As Mona approaches Haruno to say something, Haruno reassures her with a quick, "It's okay, you've got this." Now carrying the desk together, Mona looks visibly upset and avoids meeting Kuroiwa's gaze. Kuroiwa tells her to watch where she's going, but she replies that the sun is in her eyes and asks him to lead, saying she'll just watch their feet instead. Both fall into deep thought as they walk. Mona, too tired and sad to lift her head or smile, stays quiet. Meanwhile, Kuroiwa notices they're heading toward the Bridge of Love and nervously tells himself it'll be fine. Mona, uncomfortable with the silence, decides to break it. She asks Kuroiwa if he at least had some fun today, but he doesn't respond and turns his face away, determined to avoid any awkward situations at the bridge. Mona takes his silence as confirmation that she ruined his day. Feeling defeated, she wishes her last plan had worked. Suddenly, she accidentally bumps into a pile of neatly stacked boxes, causing one to topple. Before it can hit her, Kuroiwa watches her just in time by grabbing her hands. When Mona opens her eyes and realizes they're holding hands, she immediately notices they're standing on the Bridge of Love. But Kuroiwa quickly lets go, stepping back and saying, "It doesn't count. The festival's already over." Mona is surprised by Kuroiwa's comment and realizes he must have known they were passing over the Bridge of Love. After returning the box, Kuroiwa unexpectedly answers her earlier question, saying he had fun and had never experienced anything like it before. Mona's eyes light up and she thinks to herself how he always knows how to get on her nerves. The day after the festival, Mona and Haruno notice that there are now several new couples at school. Haruno comments that maybe the legend of the bridge is real. While they talk, Kuroiwa and his friends walk by. As soon as Kuroiwa turns, Mona instinctively hides. She wonders why she hid, thinking her body just reacted on its own. Remembering the impact she had on him the day before, she decides to stay confident and say hello. Gathering her courage, she steps out, greets him with a good morning, and walks toward the group with Haruno. The boys reply, and Mona suggests that they all walk to class together. They agree, and on the way, Kuroiwa's friend proposes going bowling after school as a way to wrap up the festival. They ask Haruno to join, and she says she'll go if Mona goes too. Mona agrees, knowing Kuroiwa will be there, and starts planning her next move. At the bowling alley, Mona bowls first and scores a strike, earning praise from the group. Feeling confident, she thinks she's close to winning Kuroiwa over and decides to seal the moment. She gives everyone a high five, but Kuroiwa hesitates. When he reluctantly joins in, Mona remembers the time they held hands and suddenly decides not to high five him. Pretending her shoelace has snapped, she uses it as an excuse to step away, saying she needs to grab another pair of laces. She runs off quickly, prompting her friends to call out, warning her not to run too fast or she might trip. As she runs, Mona reflects, unsure if today will work out the way she hopes. Kuroiwa is sitting alone with his friends and enjoying themselves. He reflects on how he has never high-fived a girl before, wondering if this is what city life feels like. He thinks about how he might have gone along with Mona's high five if her shoelace hadn't snapped. Trying to clear his mind, he reminds himself of his purpose for transferring to the school, to train his mind and spirit. Yet, he admits, "Look at me lately." Meanwhile, Mona is also lost in thought, regretting that she didn't sit next to Kuroiwa earlier. Determined to change that, she gathers her courage and moves to sit beside him. Kuroiwa responds with his usual calm and composed demeanor, leaving her unsure of how to proceed. Elsewhere, Haruno is learning how to bowl and impresses everyone with her quick progress. Back with Mona and Kuroiwa, Mona notices the cola he's drinking and, without asking, takes it from him. Despite Kuroiwa warning her that he has already drunk from it, she brushes off his comment and reluctantly takes a sip, thinking it might somehow help her connect with him. Haruno bowls a perfect strike, earning cheers from the group. Meanwhile, Mona drinks from Kuroiwa's cola, questioning if this counts as an indirect kiss. She then hands it back to him, but Kuroiwa, visibly surprised, refuses to take it and tells her to finish it instead. He quickly stands up for his turn to bowl, leaving Mona annoyed at his reaction. Frustrated, she drinks the rest of the cola herself. Haruno, quietly observing the situation, takes note of the tension between Mona and Kuroiwa. The next day, Mona shows off her stylish winter sweater, catching the attention of her classmates. They compliment her, and Haruno snaps pictures. Mona asks Kuroiwa why he hasn't switched to the winter uniform yet, teasing that he could warm his fingers by tucking them into the sweater. Kuroiwa replies that he can handle the cold, leaving Mona disappointed. Later, Kuroiwa gets a message from his friends to meet behind the school. They confront him about being distant with Mona, pointing out how much effort she's put into looking out for him. They suggest he be friendlier without breaking his principles. Kuroiwa reflects on their words. On his way back to class, he runs into Haruno, who asks why he's rude to Mona and tells him even she's had enough of his cold attitude. Haruno adds that he's always the coldest toward Mona, leaving him conflicted. As he walks back, he overhears Mona helping the teacher and thinks to himself, she really is a nice girl. In class, Mona realizes she forgot her textbook and asks for help. Kuroiwa offers to share his, but when she moves her desk closer, he instinctively shifts his desk away. Haruno and his friends notice and silently remind him to be nicer. Kuroiwa moves his desk back and apologizes, explaining he was startled. Mona, surprised by his kindness, thanks him with a smile. Haruno captures the moment with her phone. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next episode to see how things unfold between Mona and Kuroiwa.